A growing number of cities are no longer enforcing minor traffic stops. This is real. Why? Because cops keep killing people. And so they figure, it's not worth killing a guy just for a broken taillight. You think I'm kidding? Watch this.
On the second anniversary of George Floyd's death this week, President Biden signed an executive order on police reform. George Floyd's killing also prompted a growing number of police departments to ban minor traffic stops in a move some say could save lives.
I'm stopping you. Do you have a license?
In Grand Rapids, Michigan, a traffic stop started over a license plate and ended with Patrick Lyoya dead. An hour away, Lansing, Michigan banned traffic stops for minor infractions altogether in 2020 after the killing of George Floyd. The goal? To avoid unnecessary escalations, racial profiling, and so-called pretextual stops, where an officer uses a minor violation to pull over and search a car, says Lansing Mayor Andy Shore. What's been the pushback that you've gotten? Because you're essentially asking the police not to enforce the law.
Somewhat. Our police officers are still pulling people over, but they're doing it for public safety reasons.
The officers were concerned that we were trying to take tools away from them.
Lansing Police Chief Ellery Sosby says it was a hard sell to some officers, but he says the ban could save lives.
If I pull over a traffic stop for a busted taillight, and there's not a gun in there, and it escalates into something that puts the officer's life in jeopardy or the citizen's life in jeopardy, it's just not worth it.
According to
Maybe tell the cops to stop fucking doing that stuff. I mean, wouldn't that be the normal thing? You would tell cops to relax?
How are they gonna make their revenue up? Because I thought all those pissant kind of stops were for revenue. Like, it's like how you tax, like, poor people basically with their taillight. So where are they getting the money from to make up for that? And then,
I mean, I guess they get a lot of lawsuits when they kill people, so maybe it balances out.
Well, then also, if they're taking away tools, like, why would the cops? I was in Philly, like, last time I was there. I remember I went to go smoke weed by my old college, and a cop just called me immediately in the back, and he goes, hey, here's the ticket. You don't even have to pay this. They're gonna stop enforcing this pretty soon. Like, I have it like I actually trying to throw in my joint. You can keep your joint. So are they getting rid of the quotas? Because they're giving them numbers they got to hit. Right, that's how they measure how good a cop you are.
I know cops do have quote. I know.
So is that why they're upset that their tools being taken? Are they going to take away the dumb? I just don't understand. Like,
I can't believe that they could keep quotas and then take away their. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're getting rid of that. So let's listen.
I'm surprised that there were any cops that were upset over this, because I've got family that are in law enforcement, and I've just heard so many stories where, like, they'll go up to a car late at night, bad area, like in Jacksonville or something like that, and someone will grab gun real quick and like try to pull it out on him, stuff like that.
Right. Why would they be upset unless you still have to hit your numbers or whatever? That's what I guess is why I'm asking.
Seems like it's safer if you don't have to do that sort of a thing.
Let's listen to the rest of this.
York Times investigation. In the last 5 years, at least 400 unarmed drivers and passengers have been killed by police during traffic stops nationwide, with black motorists overrepresented. Dante Wright is one example. A 2017 report found that traffic stops were the leading cause of officer deaths in police-initiated interactions, like in the shooting death of Chicago police officer Ella French last year. Chesapeake Police Chief Calvin Wright opposes Virginia's ban. He says escalation is the real problem, not traffic stops.
Do you want to address the problem, or do you want to address the symptoms? That would be my question. Let's examine what's taking place and how can we be trained better to make sure that things don't escalate, or if they do escalate, how do we make it so that are better outcomes?
Yeah, so you train them to de-escalate. That's what you do. But cops are not trained to de-escalate. Cops are trained to, you must obey my authority, and to escalate. Whenever their cops show up, that's when violence breaks out. Cops are not taught to de-escalate, no matter what you think. And what is their number one priority? This is their train. Their safety. Their number one priority should be your safety. And they're not trained that way anymore. They're trained to make, and you heard the president, Barack Obama, even say it, that a cop's number one job is to make sure they get home safe at night. That is not their job. Their job is to make sure that I get home safe at night and the people get home safe at night that they serve. But that's not how policing works in America. Police often see themselves as an occupying force in a neighborhood and the citizens as the potential killers of them. That's how they're trained. To see not that the people that they're policing as citizens, they're there to serve. They see them as threats. That's a big problem with policing. And most of it, and all with your cops coming from the military, also a bad idea because they're trained the exact same way. Primary is their safety. That's not what you want in a cop. Do you want a fireman to be concerned with their safety or yours? No, that's why you're a fireman. That's why they get respect. They get respect because we all know they risk their own lives to save others. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So, and it's just amazing. They've been trained so horribly that they can't stop fucking killing people and escalating. They shouldn't be escalating.
Also, all these not pulling people, like, I'm all for, by the way, not pulling people over and you sit there for an hour for some bullshit shakedown money,
Yeah.
But a lot of the laws, like, if you're somebody that can't afford to get pulled over or your license is, I mean, there's so many like catastrophic things to you.
That's right.
You don't have to be that poor. You could just be like a little bit struggling and it's going to screw your life up for years to come.
Right.
I imagine that probably escalates the situation before it even gets to the cop showing up. Like, that's why I'm saying, I like, this is to get revenue, them cracking down. Like, how do they make up that revenue? That kind of like is worrying to me. Like, where are they going to?
So here we go.
Back in Lansing, Mayor Shore says they do a lot of de-escalation training, but banning minor stops reduces the potential for escalation and increases trust.
A lot of it is a trust factor. Our citizens have to be able to trust the police.
And I don't think they do. Here's to rephrase: a number of cities have concluded that the only way to make sure cops don't murder civilians during minor traffic stops is to not do minor traffic stops at all. I know. U.S. police have killed nearly 600 people in traffic stops since 2017, data shows. Deaths continue apace this year, with black victims disproportionately harmed amid calls to reduce traffic encounters. That's from April of this year. Encounters with police during traffic stops, including minor infractions, disproportionately harm people of color, according to the data collected by Mapping Police Violence. And they are by a nonprofit research group, which argues that armed police should not be involved in many of these cases. Now, I opened for Lee Camp when he taped his special here in Los Angeles. He has a very similar point in his act. He's like, why do we have guys with guns write you a ticket for a broken taillight? Why do we have guys with guns write you a ticket for a wrong left turn? Why do those people have guns? We all have guns, and that's why. And that everybody is armed. But why do we have why don't we have traffic people out there that give you traffic? Why does that have to be a cop? That's what I think that was Lee's point. Why not just have a person enforce traffic laws like you have, and you without a gun? How about we do that? So that I 100% agreed with Lee Camp on that point. About 10% of the roughly 1,100 people killed by police each year involve traffic violations. We often see the most extreme examples on the news, but this is something that happens so frequently, said Samuel, a data scientist and policy analyst who founded Mapping Police Violence. There were 97 deadly traffic stops in 2017, 114 in 2018, 117 in 2019, 119 in 2020, 117 in 21, and 25 so far in 22 as of April. So it went up every year except for COVID year. There has been a renewed scrutiny of traffic stops since the April 4th killing of Lyoya. I don't know how to say that. An unarmed 26-year-old in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was shot in the back of the head after a struggle with an officer who pulled him over for having a mismatched license plate. Loyola's death is the most recent that has captured headlines in a call for change. Duante Wright, 20 years old, was killed after being pulled over for an expired registration tag and a hanging air freshener. Sandra Bland, we all remember her, 28, was stopped for failing to signal. She ended up dead. A 32-year-old Philando Castile, we all remember that horrific scene. He died following a traffic stop after an officer claimed he looked like a suspect in a recent robbery, citing his wide-set nose. No, I don't know.
Christ.
Yeah. Sigway noted that the majority of killings by police involved either traffic stops, mental health episodes, welfare checks, nonviolent and low-level offenses, or no alleged crime, all circumstances in which there should have been an alternative response to... so instead of sending a guy with a gun to somebody who's having a mental health episode, why don't you send somebody who's trained to deal with people with mental health problems? Instead of sending a guy with a gun to do a wellness check, how about you send somebody who's maybe, I don't know, a nurse or an EMT to do a wellness check instead of someone with a gun? That's what they're saying.
Aren't they going to have, I mean, I know a bunch of EMTs and stuff. Depending on where you live, like EMTs, and they're not allowed to carry guns there. And they're all like, we should be allowed to carry guns. That, like, you're going to have somebody to protect the person you're going in case it's a violent mental health episode.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the last person we should send is someone with a gun, Kurt. Unless that person has a gun and is shooting people.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, the last person you should send.
They have a gun. How can you not send someone with a gun? I understand. Like,
we're not talking about people with guns, Kurt. We're talking about people having mental health episodes, people with wellness checks. That's what we're talking about. Are you talking about people with guns? Because that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, any kind of thing that's potentially violent.
Anything is potentially violent, Kurt.
I don't know. Mental health episode sounds like
wellness check, mental health episode. I think the last person you should. So you're saying we should send people with guns?
I guess depends on the severity of the mental health episode.
Okay.
Like,
I'm gonna disagree with you voraciously on that point. That's one of the worst ways to handle a mental health episode is to send a cop with a gun. But I appreciate your opinion. We're gonna move on. Some of the deadly traffic cases tracked this year include a Miami man stopped for an expired tag, a Milwaukee man accused of failing to signal, and an Oregon man who allegedly failed to stop while entering a roadway from a parking lot. So do you think a cop should be there for all those things? Do you think a guy with a gun should be on the scene for that? There's an expired tag. Call the guy with the gun.
Yeah, no, most of these stops are things, especially that pretext stopping. That happened me and Big J years ago. We got pulled over because he used the correct exit of a plaza to return videotapes. That's how long this was. And it was suspicious because nobody uses the correct exit. That's what the cop said. And another friend of ours had left a blunt roach in the ashtray. It wasn't either of ours. So the cop pulls over that to search and like take us in to pay a fine for this fucking... It was unbelievable. But that pretext thing is like the biggest thing to me, is that's a real common and easily abused thing, you know?
100%. Yes, we've all seen it. Here it goes on. I see no reason why somebody who has bad tags needs an armed response, said Amy Dimmock, whose son Kobe Dimmock, Heiser, 2021, was killed by police during a mental health crisis in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, the same city where Wright was fatally shot. Police are trained for combat, for adverse situations, and I think that's where we should leave them. I agree. Cops should be called to adverse situations. And they're used for everything now, and they shouldn't be, right? And I don't even think they should be sent to domestic violence disputes. You know, it's not good. It's not good to introduce a gun into a violent situation. It's just always a bad idea. And there should be other people. I'm sure we just gave $40 billion to Ukraine at the drop of a hat. I'm sure we could probably hire 1 million fucking EMTs to go help people with that $40 billion. I'm saying the point is we have the resources to deal with this, but for some reason we want to make cops take a gun and deal with all these problems. We have cops with guns in fucking schools now dealing. And so what happens when you put cops in schools? They don't protect the people. They turn those kids into criminals. That's what happens. And we've seen this over and over. People don't understand that more cops also don't mean less crime. That's not how it works. Actually, in a lot of places, it means more crime. But anyway, that's kind of amazing. And I think that's actually good. I want to make fun of cops being so corrupt and criminal that they can't help but kill people for minor traffic. They can't help but escalate. That's what it is. They're taught to escalate. And Michael Wood, when he was on this show, former sergeant in the Baltimore Police Department, he explained all this to us and how they're taught and how they don't even realize that they're part of the problem. He said, I thought I was one of the good guys, and then I looked at my statistics, and I was one of the bad guys. And go ahead.
Even cops like the former Houston police chief, he himself said, we give cops too many jobs. Like, they are not trained effectively to deal with all these various issues and like mental health crises and stuff like that. Obviously, if someone's being violent, you have to respond with some sort of security. But I mean, if someone is literally just having a non-violent mental health crisis, like, a cop is not well equipped to respond to that. They're not trained to respond to that. And I mean, I saw it in my own community. Guy, mental health crisis, homeless, walking across the street, jaywalking, got to the other side just all right. Cops went over and tackled him and accused him of trying to grab one of their guns, and then they shot him dead for jaywalking.
Where was this?
There you go.
San Clemente, California. That was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So it's good that we had a guy with a gun taking care of that jaywalking problem. I mean, it's just nuts. Anyway,
by where I grew up near Seaside in Jersey, like, this is years ago now too. Most of the cops there would take a course, so they didn't want to even carry a gun. They wanted to carry that spray or the taser. So you had to like get videotape being sprayed yourself or a taser because it's all drunk fights and stuff.
Right.
And the gun, they didn't want to have to
have the gun on them.
Yeah, right. It was way better for everybody that they were using tasers and pepper spray if they had to, because they're non-fatal.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a bar fight and half the place is drunk and the people fighting are inebriated, I don't want someone showing up with a gun. I would like to have someone show up with a taser or have someone show up with pepper spray, something non-lethal. But that's not how we have it today. We send guys with guns, cops, into bars to break up fights. And what are they supposed to do? They go in with a gun. That's what they do. That's what they're trained. So we need a complete revamp of the policing in America. And people don't want to hear that because it's a big job, but it ain't ever going to get better. And, I know a lot of people who are very sympathetic to the police, and those are people who have not had much interaction with the police. That's just a fact. Now, I'm white, and I've always lived in nice white neighborhoods. Well, I don't know how nice, but white neighborhoods. And even I've been fucked with by the cops. So they thought I was buying crack one time. It's so ridiculous. I made a wrong turn down an alley, and I realized, like, oh shit, I'm in a bad neighborhood. And I was driving my roommate's BMW at the time.
You got profiled for, like, why would you be here unless you're buying crack?
Yes.
Hampton
So they pulled me over. They have their guns drawn.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh, somebody must have just robbed a bank who fits this description. That's what I thought. So they're like they were telling me, get out of the car, screaming. So I get out of the car, got my hands up, and I go, I don't know who you think you got, but you got the wrong guy, right? That's what I'm saying. I don't know who you think you got the wrong, shut up, that kind of shit. And they get over and they don't say anything to me. They just start going through the car, throwing everything out of the fucking car.
God.
Just start throwing.
This in Chicago?
No, this is in L.A.
Wow, that's like way.
If it was Chicago, I would have said I would have used my dad's name, and I probably would have got something would have happened.
PBA card would count.
It would count. and they claim they found marijuana on the flag. Oh, I found some now. They didn't find anything. And then I finally figure out, one of the cops said, "You're not back there buying crack?" He said something. And I go, "You think I'm buying crack?" I go, there's a coffee in the cup holder. It's decaf.
Did he taste it?
Just you look on the thing. It says decaf for Jim. Anyway, that filled me, and they were such assholes to me, and they turned my car inside out, and it wasn't mine, it was my roommate. I was so filled with rage. I was on my way to a movie with Paul Nardizzi, comedian from Boston, very funny guy. We were going to see a movie, and I was so upset I couldn't even focus on the movie. I was just boiling with rage, and I don't know how black people do it in this country. I swear to fuck, I have no idea how they do it.
LA cops don't really have a great reputation in general since I was young.
They're assholes.
Great rep.
No. Anyway, so that's my story, and that's kind of interesting. So we'll see. I will see if this catches on. I don't know why they have cops doing those kind of stops. Anyway, they should have a traffic person doing those kind of stops without a gun, just like Lee Camp's suggestion. Over to Steph.
Well, you know, I just want.
What? Wait, Kurt, you want to say something?
When I used to do construction, my old boss he was always like to serve and collect. I mean, that was it was to collect. So that's why you need the gun.
Well, that's what Ferguson was. That's what Ferguson was, right? That's what Ferguson. They would just keep these people in a spiral of debt, right? And that they were running their whole city on the fines of poor black people. Anyway,
yeah, right. It's all over
over to Steph.
You know, I was just, considering when I've seen these homeless encampments here in LA, when you drive past them and the police are there, and they're just like, and dump trucks are there to scoop up their belongings, and I have never seen like a medical practitioner there to help these people that are homeless.
With their outreach.
I've never seen any kind of Red Cross there to help these people who are obviously in crisis.
Right. So that
back to Jimmy.
What they had their plan. So when they've been getting rid of these homeless encampments in Los Angeles, and part of their plan was they would first send outreach workers to get them to try to go to some shelter, whatever, to try, and then they would have those same but those outreach workers were cops, and then they would also arrest them. You can't do that. You can't have the person who's supposed to help you.
The outreach.
That's not.
They call them outreach.
That's
workers.
not. Yeah, they're not. It's not an outreach worker. That's a fucking enemy who's coming to put them in jail.
The story I told about the homeless guy who got killed for jaywalking, those were two homeless resource officers, is what they called them.
The homeless resource officer killed the homeless guy for jaywalking. Is that what you're saying, Jackson?
Yep.
Yeah. So you see the problem. You see the problem. Here we're doing stand-up comedy in Irvine, California, Las Vegas, San Diego, Salt Lake City, Indianapolis, Louisville, all over the place. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets.